Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 12 in Be With Me in Romans. We're in chapter 3 today, and there's going to be an excellent question. I'm going to title today, Respecting the Question. Here's the question that is asked. Is God unrighteous to inflict wrath on us? That is God unfair? Is God mean to punish sin? And it's a great question. So the first thing I want to do is respect the question, because it's a thoughtful, intelligent question that sinners should be asking before they come to faith, or some people should be stuck on this question. And if you're stuck on this question and maybe making an accusation against God today, which is what the straw man that Paul is using here, that God is unrighteous, he's making a wrong conclusion with right data. The data is that God is inflicting wrath, that God is just and punishes certain things. And then they're making the wrong conclusions about God. Hey, here's the good news, is you have the opportunity to change your thinking, to ask this question, ponder this question at your leisure. God's even kind to allow you the leisure to consider it. Romans 2:4 says, that God's kindness is meant to lead you to repentance. So please consider it. Great job that you're considering this question. Here's where he starts. He starts with Jewish people and non-Jewish people. He's throwing both under the bus, because both are without excuse. The Jewish people are without excuse because of the law. The non-Jewish people are without excuse because of creation. And both find themselves with an opportunity for grace, for God making an offering of grace. So here's the passage here today. He's going to talk about Hesed and the faithfulness of God. Then he's going to get to this question. This is chapter 3, verse 1. Then what advantage has the Jew, or what is the value of circumcision? Much in every way. To begin with, the Jews were entrusted with oracles of God. Well, what if some were unfaithful? Does their faithlessness of the Jews nullify the faithfulness of God? By no means. Let God be true, though everyone were a liar, as it is written, that you may be justified in your words and prevail when you, God, are judged. So let me just pause there. So that is just addressing God's faithfulness through his covenant. He's always been faithful to covenant, even though the guy on the other side of covenant, us, has broken that time and time again. All right, so here's the big question for today, verse 5. But if our unfaithfulness serves to show the righteousness of God, what shall we say? That God is unrighteous to inflict wrath upon us? And then he's parentheses here, I speak in a human way, close parentheses, by no means, for then how could God judge the world? But if through my lie God's truth abounds to his glory, why am I still being condemned as a sinner? And why not do evil that good may come, as some people slanderously charge us with saying their condemnation is just? So here's the criticism. It boils down to saying, hey, I think that wrath, that God doing wrath is unrighteous. And I'm accusing God of being unrighteous. And it's the wrong conclusion. It's the wrong character of God. And it even forgets his offering of grace at the end of it, by making a right observation, which is that God does inflict wrath, and then they make the wrong accusation. So the preamble here is that God is righteous in his judgments, and the unrighteous accusation is that God is unrighteous. God is unjust in this particular way. That is, that he is creating us knowing that we're going to fail, knowing that he's a judge, knowing that he has to punish it, and knowing that he's going to inflict wrath. It's basically saying, hey, I don't like that there's a hell. I don't like that there's a need for hell. So I don't like that God's righteous wrath ends up with a punishment. And so I'm going to accuse God of being unjust. And I'm asking, is God's wrath an unrighteous wrath? And does it celebrate the failure of mankind by saying God is not good? So it's assuming, number one, that God created. Number two, that God makes the rule. Number three, that God can create or not create. And he decides to create, and he decides to give man free will. And he decides to give every man and woman enough information in creation and in the law to know that they're in need of him, and knowing that he is just, his character is just, but that wrath is going to follow because some are going to make the wrong decision. And it forgets the offering at the end of this. So the accusation here, and it's a great question, is God righteous to inflict wrath upon us? It's a saying, God is unjust to allow and to know that some human beings are going to fail, versus God is perfectly righteous to punish the unrighteousness of people. And the question is, foundationally, who is unrighteous? Is God unrighteous? Is he unrighteous by giving us free will, knowing that we're going to fail? Or is man unrighteous in his rebellion and in his wrong view of God? And also forgetting that God makes a way at the end of this. So what kind of a God would make a creation where all who are created are on the highway to hell and wrath? Well, he's a righteous God, but this accusation here is that he is unrighteous. And if you today are finding yourself making that accusation that God isn't good, that God is wrongly wrathful, then you have an opportunity to change your view. Maybe you're the unrighteous one who is rebelling and has the wrong view of God. Maybe he is perfectly right and good and just in his view of sin and judgment, and he has to punish it so that he is rightfully doing wrath. But if I'm righteous and I need an unrest, what if I need a rescue? So if you're asking the question today, knowing at this very moment in time, you're under grace to even consider the question. So he's right, he's patient with you, and the question, hopefully, is leading you to repentance. So I think, in its essence, the observation is correct, that God does inflict wrath, God is just, and he punishes evil. The problem with today's question is it's making a wrong conclusion that God is unrighteous, which is not the right conclusion. The right conclusion is God is just, comma, and I am unjust. And I'm glad if you're a person who is considering the question today, even so, I'm honoring your question. I'm respecting the person. Please stick around because Paul is asking the question and he's going to answer it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for considering the question. That God may be unrighteous. It's a crazy question, and we'll answer it as time goes on.